Howdy, folks. It's Leighton from this podcast that you're voluntarily listening to. I'm here to tell you some stuff because usually I'd say there's a video episode, but the lack of video episodes will continue until my foot morale improves. This made sense when I wrote it. But in the interim, if you miss seeing our faces, you can access 4 years of video episodes by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/LeightonNight. And you can also find the fan Discord, weekly minis, commentary tracks with guests like Jory, and all sorts of other fun stuff. This show is exclusively sponsored by listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show, please consider joining our Patreon for as low as $2 a month, and I promise you will only regret it a little bit. Patreon.com/LeightonNight. We have a very fun episode today, which is just me and Jory talking shit about horror movies. Specifically, Exorcist Believer, Late Night with the Devil, and one more that we're coy about for literally no reason, so I won't say what it is. But this episode contains pretty thorough spoilers for all 3 movies, and we loop back and spoil others during conversations about different movies. So if getting spoiled is something you want to avoid, please tread with caution and enjoy the show.
So, have you talked on the pod about how maybe's tongue is sticking out all the time, all of a sudden?
Yeah, it was literally like an issue the last time I recorded with Brian because I kept laughing hysterically and then I sent the pictures to Brian and he did not find them as funny as I did, which was nearly crying laughing.
Did he find them funny at all?
I sent him one and it hit him at the right angle, but you know, the man has no taste and we both know this, so.
What a fucking asshole.
Let it be known that I just sent a picture to Jory of Maybe with her tongue out, and he laughed really hard at it, so...
Heartily, I would say, from the diaphragm.
Wow.
I do think, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to talk about maybe's mortality, but it does kind of... it does kind of evoke something in me in terms of, like, oh, man, getting old sucks. Like, I know that soon I'm gonna be dredged up from a river all bloated with my tongue sticking out. That's a bummer. I hate to think about that.
Do you feel like that every time you see a picture of a small animal?
I mean, you know, anytime I see a picture of something that's kind of innocent and pure, it does kind of make me think like, yes, I remember being that way. I remember not realizing the
old
death
age.
wounds. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a dog and like be literally mentally incapable of mortality salience. I would have my tongue out all the like suns out, tongues out. That would be me all the time.
I think I sent you this article when I found it. I read a really interesting article once that was about, and I mean actually there was just like a number of articles that I skimmed just yesterday that were about like animal cognizance and animal sapience, where it's like more or less about the idea that, like, I mean, this feels kind of like religious doctrine a little bit to me, but like the idea that humans have souls and consciousness and animals do not. And I mean, I think that's like, for me, that's always very clearly been kind of a philosophical distinction, but I guess there's been some science that shows that animals are probably just as conscious as we are, even like flies and bugs. They're idiots. But they are conscious. And I found an article that I found really interesting at one point when I was researching. I mean, researching Homebody was a lot of just like bummer stuff, as you know. But I found a piece that like talked about like how, I think the metaphor that they used was that like a fish dying of dehydration on the deck of a fishing boat, feeling pain in every one of its pores, doesn't have the mercy that we do to realize that death is coming soon, because the fish only knows the present moment, and so as far as it knows, the pain that it's feeling is going to last forever. Which is just like, Jesus!
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. The moment that you brought up this thing, I knew you were talking about the fish thing. And what can I say? I just find animal suffering to be hilarious. No, that's a chilling a very chilling thing. I mean, it's similar in terms of like when people describe like crying infants as being manipulative, or that like babies are in some way being manipulative when they cry and that they're like trying to trick you, when it's like this is a creature that is trying to get its needs met the only way that it knows how. It is not a master manipulator. That baby is not Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. What do you think about just a couple days ago I was at Travel Town, the train museum at Griffith Park, and there
Wow, that
was a
sounds
kid.
dope.
There was a little train kid who didn't want to leave Travel Town, and they were like doing like the funniest, like unconvincing fake cry. Just going like, I don't want to go. Glad I have my mic nice and hot for that noise I just made. But
I'm glad.
what do you think of that? Like, I mean, that kid.
I mean, well, I'm talking about like under 12 months or whatever. I think children become very advanced at lying and manipulation from a young age. As
so you're
anybody
like
who's
pure
previous...
instinct.
Yeah, I mean, this is like children get. I don't want to say they get good at it, but they discover it, and that it works sometimes. But it's not like a 6-month-old is conniving and scheming against you. It's as with many, like I try to look at a lot of human behaviors that are baffling, especially ones that are like harmful to other people, of like this person is trying to get their needs met in the only way that they know how. And all humans have a need for connection, acceptance, and being loved. And for some people, that is a very, very difficult thing to procure. And thus, through a variety of ways, have adapted and developed to think that this is the only way they can acquire that feeling of acceptance. Which is difficult sometimes to accept, because as much as you just want to be like, that guy is an asshole.
Yes.
I guess you can hold both at the same time, which is another difficult thing for humans to do. Anyway, all of that to come back around to animals. It's like when Maybe is a little stinker trying to sneak food, or sticking her tongue out to make me laugh, which clearly she realizes is a positive thing because I react positively to her dumb little tongue.
Is that your read on it?
I don't know. Maybe she's allergic to something in the environment and her tongue is swelling, and I'm ignoring critical signs of her early onset dog dying disease. I don't know.
Your apartment is swelling with black mold that is going to kill first you and then her.
No. It wouldn't give me the mercy of killing me first. It would kill her first, so I would have to suffer through that before.
Of course. Well, the mold
myself.
is a sapient master manipulator, so.
This is so true. I actually want to disregard everything that we just said. Mold is out to get me specifically.
Yeah, so is fire.
With malice and forethought.
Heights. Yeah.
Lightning is faster than you. What is it? I was going to quote our game, but...
Oh, yeah, I remember the words from that game.
Yeah.
There's the line that I remember is in all caps, where it's like... and inside your body is a beating heart, which is lightning's sole purpose to stop, or something like that.
Yeah, that. Why did we get here?
Welcome to Leighton Night.
Without Brian Wecht again.
I miss him so goddamn much.
Before we elaborate on this, I just want to say I'm Leighton Gray. That's Jory Griffis back again.
Hi.
For another wonderful episode. We're very glad to have you. Thank you for being once again so generous with your time and energy to join us here today.
Happy to be here.
Jory, how would you describe our group chat with Brian?
A
hotbed of hard right rhetoric.
I mean, there was a lot of commentary on the woke PC left. Most of it positive. Brian was sending a lot of photos from the state of Vermont, where he currently is, home of Bernie, and I do think like Brian is very charmed and tickled by, because I mean, when the left makes a caricature of itself, I find it very charming, and when the right makes a caricature of itself, I want to find a hole to die in.
All right, but no, on the left you're on the left you're not allowed to point out that there's a tendency of general phoniness, as there is amongst all humans, but a particular brand that's hard to stomach, especially when it's people you pretty much agree with, and it's like, you guys are being humiliating.
Oh, you little goofs, you scamps.
Yeah.
One of the things he sent was a concert venue had a poster for an act that is a fusion of the Grateful Dead and Notorious B.I.G. Which is, I mean, I'm morbidly curious about that, but not enough to Google it.
But you know, everyone who's there is having a great time.
Oh yeah, see, now I feel like I'm talking shit.
Yeah, you are. Should I text Brian in this group chat that we're shit talking this group chat and exposing him for his anti-woke agenda?
Yeah, for sure. I want Brian to be involved in this pod. I miss him so goddamn much, as previously stated.
Brian, Jory, and I are actively outing you for your contributions to this group chat. Great. See, this is like when he calls you against my will, and you can't hear me, and I just listen to him spread misinformation.
Yeah, while I'm on my bicycle.
I was genuinely concerned for you during that debacle. The tongue's out of her mouth, folks. It's made an appearance. Jory, today I thought it would be fun to talk about now that we've... Jory has now updated our group chat with... Brian, I love you, but... Brian immediately says, I'm uncancelable. Bring it, bitches. Brian might as well have just put out a track called Family Matters, am I right?
I'm not up to date on what's going on there.
Oh, the Drake and Kendrick beef that's happening right now.
I've heard about it. The language I would use is that I find it profoundly uninteresting. That makes me feel like such a fucking asshole, but I just don't care.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair to not care about it at this point in time. I will say, as somebody who does not regularly listen to either artist, I have been keeping a close watch and listening to the tracks, and they're pretty good.
Okay. I liked Damn a lot, and I broadly like the singles from Drake and not the album tracks.
Yeah,
but
the
I kind of
Pulitzer
just
Prize-winning album, Damn.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it. That was some good rock and roll music, and I feel like I don't know. I'm not really listening to a lot of music right now, so I'll listen to Euphoria at some point. I listened to Cowboy Carter when it came out. I haven't listened to Dead Poets Society or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I will say that Euphoria and Not Like Us are both bangers. Not to say that Meet the Grams isn't, but that one is more a serial killer type beat, full of a lot of very brutal stuff that's not necessarily the most, I'm bopping along doing my day kind of song. Well, anyway, that's my weighing in on the current...
It's burning hot discourse, yeah.
Well, Jory, with my current rear window type situation, I've been having friends in my home, including you.
I understand characterizing it as a rear window type situation, but that makes it sound like you're about to either witness a murder or yourself be murdered.
Well, I don't know. You gotta keep... When you're... I went outside, like, actually legitimately outside, not just on my balcony, because I had to go to a doctor's appointment today for the first time since I got out of fucking surgery 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so, you gotta keep things exciting when you're just stuck. You're stuck and your foot hurts.
Yeah.
I
can find funny your description of your situation. The specific verbiage I can laugh at. You being in that situation is not funny to me, and thus I fall into a pall of silence.
I don't know. It's kind of funny, though. It is kind of
That's
funny.
Up to you.
It's my right. I can reclaim me jumping off a roof being funny, especially because So I went to this is my gross foot update for everyone because I know everybody cares, but it's relevant to the show because I stumbled into having to explain to my foot doctor what WikiFeet is, that he had apparently never heard of it.
That was one of the most fraught sentences I've ever heard. You talked about stumbling into something, and then you started talking about WikiFeet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that works. The stumbling metaphorically. No, I got to see my foot for the first time since surgery, and I got to see the metal bits that are poking out of it.
How does that make you feel?
Seeing it is freaky, and then he adjusted one of them, and it's maybe the most indescribable physical sensation I've ever felt, because it's like stuck into your bone, right? And you don't necessarily have nerve endings on the inside of your bone, but it goes through skin and muscle, and I just felt it. Jory, have you ever felt a wiggling inside your bones?
I absolutely have not. I cannot imagine.
So those will get removed in a few weeks. And I was like, is that going to hurt? And he was like, no. So yeah, then I had to tell this poor respected doctor who went to school to figure out how to operate on feet so people can walk what WikiFeet is. And that one's on me.
It seems, I don't believe that person. I don't want to assume that a foot surgeon has a foot fetish, but I do think that there is no way they haven't at least stumbled upon it. That seems impossible.
He was saying that he got so tired of people asking him if he has a foot fetish that at this point he just says yes.
That's dope. Okay, that rules.
Yeah, I really respected that. And he said that it always makes the other person asking really uncomfortable, and then they stop. So,
don't ask.
I think
you
he
fucker.
Wins. Anyway, but no infection. Everything's looking good, and by good, it looks horror movie Tetsuo the Iron Man horrific. But that is good because it's not infected. So, yay!
Okay. All right. Hooray.
I'll be able to walk in like 4 weeks.
Hey! I think that's a lower number than the last time you told me, but you might have told me it multiple weeks ago, so never mind.
Yeah, that would be fair. Anyway, all of that to say, you have very kindly come to hang out with me in the past couple of weeks a few times, and we have witnessed some films together, and I thought it might be fun to talk about those films because I think we both have pretty strong opinions about said films.
Let's do it.
But also, real quick, I wanted to talk about Twister because I tried to talk to Brian about Twister last time, and he's never seen that movie.
Oh, interesting. I guess maybe Brian was getting a PhD in quantum physics around the time that movie came out.
No, but he essentially said the same, and then I told him that I was surprised he hadn't seen it because it's like a movie where the nerds are cool.
Mostly, yeah. I think that's probably pretty true.
I mean, Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton are cool, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman is cool just because I love him. Right,
but they are like the Philip Seymour Hoffman character and those other characters in that kind of group are portrayed as being like the more geeky guys. They're the geeks.
Yes.
They're like the lone gunmen from X-Men to a certain X-Men. Jesus fucking Christ.
You want to tell us your latest opinions on all of Marvel and DC, Jory?
I hate how superhero movies have flattened the discourse around comics to a place where comics are now synonymous with superheroes even more than they ever have been, while nevertheless superhero films have not been consistent with a pattern of consumers going towards comics, even superhero ones, and in fact are consistent with a downward trend in comics readership, threatening small independent booksellers everywhere.
God bless and keep you, Jory.
Wow.
I was trying to put you in a tough position, and you genuinely whipped out some insight. This is why you've been on the show more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Twister's
a great movie. I love Twister a lot.
I think it's a really fun movie, as long as you don't think about it.
I do think that there's like a lot of I don't blame people for being super nostalgic for the things they saw as a kid, but I have a tendency that I'm always checking and trying to be internally consistent about, where I tend to judge more harshly things that I liked as a child, which in part might just be like a self-hatred thing where I'm like, I was a fucking idiot to like this, which is
Fuck
very
that
mean
kid.
to say to yeah, to like, how old was I when that movie came out? 9. I do think like, you know, I tend to like on viewing movies that I enjoyed a lot as a kid, especially in the theater where I saw Twister, I tend to be like pretty harsh. And watching that movie again in the last like, you know, I think at least 10 years, I was like, this movie rules. There's so many things about it from like a character and story standpoint that don't make any sense, and from like a science standpoint that don't make any sense. But it's just so like, I don't know. I think it's like a great example of like that last moment of Hollywood blockbuster filmmaking where it was a special effects bonanza, but there was still enough practical stuff to be fun, even though that movie is dripping with some pretty questionable CG.
I
But
gotta say, it looks pretty good. There are
hell
maybe
yeah, that
two
rules.
instances where it was like, okay, yeah, that looks like shit. But for the most part, it genuinely looks great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a feeling the cow probably doesn't look great now.
No, it does not. But I think the more notable bad CGI in that is it's when they're going through these like water spout type tornadoes, as
Uh-oh.
Jamie Gertz's character, who is just so completely thankless, is on the phone with her clients because she's a yuppie therapist. But those water spouts don't look good, and the cows
Aw.
don't look good, but the water spouts look worse. So
And
it stands out
the
a
cows are
little
a funny
less.
cartoon. They look like a Chick-fil-A billboard, so
Yeah.
we tolerate it.
Yeah, I mean, with Twister, you can tell they wanted to do for natural disasters what Jurassic Park did for dinosaurs.
And what Jaws did for water.
Yeah, and as a child, that's not just the ocean, that's any body of water could have jaws in it,
Oh yeah. Huh.
you know, in
The
pools.
Jaws ride, you know that the Jaws animatronic is just a funny puppet, but the real actual Jaws might also be down there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my history with the Twister Ride It Out experience at Universal as a child, where I screamed and
Mm-hmm,
cried and hated it,
mm-hmm.
was on the same trip that I also went on the ET ride and the Back to the Future ride, both of which scared the shit out of me, and only narrowly missed being forced to go onto the Jaws ride.
Ooh, okay.
I think I spent most of that day sobbing. I was even scared of like the vestigial remnants of what was previously in the Twister building, which was like the Ghostbusters show, that I guess
Yeah.
they still had all the shit, so they were doing like a dancing, little whatever you call the little pop-up shows that they do
Yeah, like
every half an hour.
this street performance thingies there. Didn't you
Yeah.
tell me that the premise of the show was that the Ghostbusters were possessed by ghosts themselves and driven to dance?
Yes.
Which I mean, I think as a kid I might have found heartbreaking. I don't want to see this happen to them.
Yeah, this is a humiliating violation of my bodily autonomy. But yeah, in terms of ranking frightening things on that Universal trip, it's like we've got scary tornadoes, explosions,
Mm-hmm.
Sharks, multiple, Back to the Future, in which there's also a dinosaur in that, which is scary, and then worst of all, the scariest thing to haunt my entire childhood, which is E.T. saying your name.
I'm pretty sure I've told you this before, but when I went on the ET ride, I was like so like hopping excited, and I was like a little boy, and I was like rattling my knees together. And then when they bring down like the harness, it for some inconceivable reason on this thing that is absolutely not a thrill ride, it has like a fiberglass thing that goes down between your knees, keeping your legs separated, and it got like slapped down over just my 2 legs in one little leg slot, and like it was definitely very uncomfortable, and so it put me in this like really weird state of like disillusionment for the entire ride. So that then as I'm going through at the end where E.T. Thanks you all, I'm like in pain and unhappy, and E.T. goes like, Jory. It's like, I don't know. I'm 8 and my handwriting wasn't clear, person who works at Universal Studios. I'm sorry.
I mean, did you see that as like E.T. blithely ignoring your pain and frustration?
Oh,
Or
mocking me, yeah, with derision. I love that about that ride. I mean, the famous mawkish thing from Steve Spielberg about it was that like he wanted the ride to feel like it was like kind of reaching out and forming a personal connection with riders.
oh,
Uh, like he didn't want it just to be like a thrill ride roller coaster thing. He wanted it to have like the emotional experience of the movie, and
yeah.
that's where the idea came from. That you write down your name as you come in, and then the minimum wage employee who's running the ride has to say your name into a microphone so that it can be read back to you. Which I
Yeah, I mean, it did accurately capture the emotional experience of watching the movie, which was abject terror for me at least. But man, I'd be so curious to hear from, hey, did anybody ever work on the ET ride? And were you the person who took children's names? Because that just seems like there are so many ways that could go wrong or be frustrating.
It really could.
How many people are putting in Amanda Hug and Kiss? And worse.
Oh yeah, and like, are there any like times where there's like a bad take where you accidentally like fuck up and go like, oh fuck, and then you have to like run in and like yank the power cord out of ET right before he can say that back to the children?
I just like the idea of E.T. calling a bunch of kids suddenly and violently motherfuckers. I don't know why that idea is bringing tears to my eyes right now.
Is it the short film A Star Is Burns where Monty Burns says I'll always be right here to young Elliot?
Yes, it is. I literally watched that episode last night.
I fucking love all of that so much. It's so good.
It's great. Don't cry for me. I'm already dead.
I made a movie? No wonder I was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly.
Oh, it's such a good episode. And God bless John Lovitz, you know.
Fucking Matt Groening wanted his name taken off of it because he hated the idea of a crossover on his sacrosanct show.
Really?
Getting a foot rub on Jeffrey Epstein's fucking plane.
I feel like what's particularly egregious about that episode is that like Jay Sherman is such a Mary Sue in it.
Oh, yeah, he can do no wrong.
Yeah, he knows the whole Oscar Mayer Wiener song.
And he charms everyone in Springfield. Everyone absolutely loves him. Counter the text of the actual show he came from.
Yeah, which it would be a better episode if everybody fucking hates that guy because John Lovitz is at his best when under total attack.
God. That episode had so many effects on me as a kid where like I didn't see the Death Wish movies until much later, so I had no idea what they were or who Charles Bronson was. Like I was familiar with Hank Azaria's Charles Bronson impression so many years before I actually saw anything with Charles Bronson in it. So Death Wish 9, where it's just an elderly Charles Bronson in bed and he says, "I wish I was dead."
Yeah, I guess maybe only now as an adult I appreciate the fact that the recreation that wins the Oscar of Hans Moleman's man getting hit by football is George C. Scott.
Yes.
Hits me particularly hard as an adult.
It's so funny. Ah, my groin.
I love The Simpsons so much.
The Simpsons on Disney Plus.
No, I ethically consume it by the fact that I've paid for 9 whole seasons on Amazon Prime.
The Simpsons on Amazon Prime. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, we were going to talk about movies and then we veered in multiple different directions. We did talk about Twister.
Yeah, Twister's a great movie.
Spun out, much like the car that lands in front of poor fucking Jamie Gertz.
Yeah.
Traumatized by this objectively traumatic thing, and everyone's like, nah, it's cool.
And then left by her husband, who is objectively a fucking asshole.
And doesn't care or understand why she's leaving. Like, because after that is when they go help, why can't I remember female lead's name that I was... Helen Hunt's. When they go visit
I was
her,
trying to remember the character name. If I could have pulled it out, I would have felt so great
that
about
would have
it.
been incredible. When they go to her house and save her from the tornado, but Bill Paxton climbs out the window with like the golden retriever that he saved over his shoulders. It's like, I'm glad Jamie Gertz wasn't around to see that, because with all the other humiliations of the movie, if I also witnessed that happen, I would be like, I would never emotionally recover.
God.
Anyway, so we watched 3 movies in the past month
Mm-hmm.
ish,
Mm-hmm.
and they range from not a movie to an embarrassment of a movie to I'm shocked at how much I liked this movie.
Hey, that's actually more positive language than you used the last time we talked about the
It's
latter
growing on
film,
me.
which is yet to be named.
It's growing on me, Jory. I don't know about you.
That's fascinating.
I had a really good time watching it, but it's like the level of mid-range trifle that
Yep.
I've been so badly craving that
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
my brain is just amping it up more, because it was just like, oh, a regular kind of shitty horror movie that I don't hate.
That's right.
There's
I
blood
mean,
in it.
I don't know. I don't know for how long we keep the title obscured from the audience. Uh, but
I think we
we
start
watched.
from the beginning.
Let's do it.
So we watched Exorcist Believer, which is in the not a movie tier.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to say about it at this point, other than just really compounding the Conjuring Christian horror propaganda shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Conjuring movies are fun haunted house movies.
Yes, and this movie is decidedly not.
They were still making this weird, I think it has this misguided idea bottled up that it can be a prestigious film in the way that the original was. And it just I recently I feel like I've been having a lot of thoughts about how, like, maybe spurred on in part by Exorcist Believer, about how, like, I am trying very hard to be more optimistic and positive about media, particularly because I do love, like, schlocky movies. I love to enjoy a movie that's just like a great C plus B minus. Like, I had so much fun seeing Megan the first time in theaters and then watching it again with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's a very good C plus B minus of a movie. I think those are great. I love watching them.
Yes.
Especially when they have, like, a kind of palpable joy to them.
Yes.
And I think that's what hits me so much about Exorcist Believer is, like, truly no one wanted to be there. It's a contractual obligation of a film. It's really,
they
really
spent
hard to watch.
$400 million on these rights, and this is what they've done.
Oh, that's such a bummer.
Yeah. And it just feels so disingenuous. Like, we rail against focus tested to death shit all the time, but that's the true. It just so completely, and I swear that audio mixing is so bad. I was genuinely convinced while we were watching it that the water that drips from my ceiling, which is what compelled me to the roof in the first place, had like ruined the sound system on my TV. It's fine. But no, it's just so bad, so joyless. There's no fun. And like weirdly moralizing and preachy.
Right, it was.
Gesturing at multiculturalism, but doubling down on being extremely like Old Testament Christian.
Yeah. And also seemingly afraid to evoke any actual, like, lived human experience with any non-Christian religion.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They're there, and the quote unquote bad guys are so like Trump voter coded that it doesn't work.
While keeping them as unspecific as possible to avoid insulting any person with any actual real world beliefs.
Yeah, it reminds me of Knives Out, that view of sneering liberal posturing.
You mean the film by the master of suspense, Rian Johnson?
I do mean the film by the master of suspense, Rian Johnson. Uh,
Um, yeah, I feel like the thing that was killing you and I both about that movie, which again, I feel like this type of thing is easy to say and harder to back up and quantify.
sure.
But I Exorcist Believer, I don't know what happened in its production to make this happen, but there is no sustained sequence where characters have a conversation about their thoughts or feelings. And I'm not even talking about like literally talking about their thoughts and feelings. There is no point in the movie where anyone expresses an interior worldview of any kind. It's so depressing to watch. It's edited
Yes.
so choppily and just like moves at such a frustrating brisk pace through material that is like almost exclusively about the way people are feeling about things
Hmm.
without ever having those characters express how they're feeling about things other than the Arrested Development Thomas Jane I just want my kid back type of sentiment. It's such a
Uh,
bummer.
yeah, and the way, and part of this is marketing of setting it up of like, oh, it's Exorcist, but there's two of them, and it's just like
There's
the
two of
second
them,
girl
baby.
is so ancillary to the point that it's like, gee, I wonder which child will survive.
uh,
uh, which is fine. Like horror movies have been doing that forever, but
and in fact there's like a version of that exact sentiment you just said that's like kind of brutal and heavy in a way that horror movies can be.
yeah.
Like there's a version of that that is like unflinchingly mean, and this definitely wasn't that. It was mawkish, even though we never
Yes.
actually learned about anyone's feelings at any point.
Yeah, no, because it felt like such a like dare cautionary tale.
Mm.
Like I know the movie is called The Fucking Exorcist. Of course it's going to be pretty Christian, but like the weird like pro-life shit. I don't think that's a reach to say. I mean, that's like the pivotal like twist of the movie.
Well,
Uh
I agree, but at the same time, I'm also like David Gordon Green and what's his face, the guy that he works with. Why do I forget his name right now? Comedy man with a beard,
Danny McBride.
Danny McBride. Um, I don't think that they're staunch Christians, are they?
I don't think so.
It's just like a token thing that needs to be in an Exorcist movie.
I guess that's a really good
Yeah,
point. It's in the I think maybe it's because the movie lacks any amount of like soul or heart or genuine feeling, that pretty much the only thing that you have to work with are like these goofus and gallant ass ciphers, which
hmm.
fit well with like of course that's like what the thought's going to be when the only thing in this movie are really like cardboard cutouts of existing ideas
Yeah,
in absence of any actual emotional feeling.
right. And in this moment, I'm thinking about like, what's the screenplay like? Like,
That's such a good question.
how humane are the characters on the page? Because I mean, the edit could not be less charitable to the performances that the actors gave. You can't tell
Yeah.
what performances the actors gave because of the way that it's edited.
You know what
So,
really boils my beats is when I want to find a screenplay and instead I can only find like a transcription.
oh yes, that's so
Why do
infuriating.
you think I would want that? There is a reason why a screenplay is different from somebody just writing down what was said.
Just copying and pasting from the closed captions file.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
Woof. Anyway, so that one's a movie, quote unquote, that we
um,
watched.
yeah, and since we're going deep on movies and horror movies and shit in this episode, I do want to say that the Halloween trilogy that David Gordon Green co-wrote and directed, uh I broadly liked the first one up until I didn't and left the theater feeling very sad and a strong feeling of dislike for the movie. And
Yes.
I strongly disliked Halloween Kills, the sequel, which
Oh,
is
you
like
don't like Evil Dies Tonight? It ends tonight.
yeah, that movie frustrates me so much too because that exact film, like even the editing and style of it, if it was 15 years older and had Jason Voorhees in it, I probably would like it fine because it's just like a mean-spirited slasher movie.
Yeah.
It's just is like such a weird thing tonally to do as a sequel to the first movie in that series.
Yeah.
It's really weird. But Halloween Ends, which I believe you still haven't seen, right?
I still have not seen it, but I'm intrigued because of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the language I was about to use, which is hyperbole, I was about to say that I love that movie. I don't, but I just like that movie really made me feel like I haven't seen any of David Gordon Green's other films, but other than those three movies and Exorcist Believer, but like I think that movie is such like a spirited and interesting and silly and specific horror movie where like I mean people are probably not worried about spoilers for that movie at this point.
Right.
But like it's like a teen drama where one of the teens in this tangled romance story is the disciple of Michael Myers. It is so stupid and is such like a like 80s sequel Friday the 13th part 5 style idea of how to follow up the story from the second movie. While also being so earnest and having like genuinely good performances and like patient editing and cinematography that doesn't look like complete shit, that like I just genuinely had a fun time watching it. And in the world of whether or not a movie like blooms or withers in your memory as like your idea on it kind of sours or improves over time, I think about that movie like it's genuinely good. I really liked it. And so yeah, it's a bummer thinking about Exorcist Believer just being like such a genuinely bad time.
Yeah, a baffling cultural artifact. And speaking of baffling cultural artifacts, brings us to our next movie, which we both watched with one Mr. Aaron Hansen as well. We watched Late Night with the Devil. Leighton Night with the Devil, am I right?
I made a noise over you saying that, but Leighton Night with the Devil, am I right? I did it so I could steal the joke from you because I thought it was so good.
You said it funnier, I think.
I don't think so.
Well, maybe the gall for you to say it. To speak over the woman in the room.
Oh, I can't undo it. I can't make it not have happened. Leighton, can I undo it and make it not have happened?
No, you have to live with it.
Oh.
And if this were one of these horror movies that we're talking about, you would be swiftly executed for your misogyny ?
And then I also would be trapped in a Jacob's Ladder style hell of my own making, where I continue to relive it in increasingly phantasmagoric fashion.
I wish that Late Night with the Devil committed to literally anything other than being just incredibly mid.
Yeah. So this is that movie is I think probably the actual nexus of why I've been having all those thoughts about like being a total fucking hater and saying that something sucks, whether or not I think my main misgiving about it has to do with
the AI. People cry after we finished the movie because we had paid money to a service that held this terrible, despicable. I can't even commit to this.
I wept. I think it's truly whack that movie has AI images in it. I think it's truly whack when any commercial product has AI images in it as part of its finished structure.
It is the laziest, most lame, creatively bankrupt shit possible. I
also think that like, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, genuinely, without knowing the model that those images were trained on, I think that having those images in the film is, I am not being, like, hyperbolic. I think it is truly, like, legally tantamount to the movie containing stolen work. I think that truly fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But also, it's just far and away, like, not the most troubling thing about the movie for me,
that's the thing of seeing like 1-star reviews of it that are people only coming at it from a moral angle. And this is the thing that drives me crazy about like any sort of discourse about like production or people behind a thing. because if we really hate this because of, you know, whatever our moral quibble with the thing is, regardless, wouldn't you rather also point out all of the other things about this thing that fucking suck?
Yeah.
Which
I
is
know.
how I feel about this movie, where any discussion of how it actually just kind of generally sucks, AI aside, is completely drowned out by hand wringing, which, to be fair, I
Yeah,
understand the impulse with the hand wringing. Like, I'm not trying to cast that,
I do.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And I also,
I
I don't feel the need to go on a long, you know, backing myself up here about like, yeah, I genuinely do think the AI is bad. Like, yeah, duh. I don't feel a need to give a whole thing about this.
yeah.
It's just that
Like
the movie also sucks. Can we just talk about the other ways in which this movie is bad instead of just being like, I really showed them by standing up for artists.
yeah, I'm looking the movie up on IMDb right now because IMDb tends to be so much harder on movies than the other kind of like ratings aggregators.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the thing about the movie that is really tough for me, which again, this might just be me like trying to be like kind of like I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be like even-handed about it. Is that I feel like there's got to be something in it for someone if the movie is as well reviewed and as well liked as it is. And this is my hesitation in saying that the movie is like a complete dog pile or something, like a
Right.
worm water. That it's fucking that it's gangrenous garbage or any other alliterative
I liked worm
affectation.
water, though. I mean, there was some literal worm water in that movie, and that might be
That's
one of the few
true.
things I liked about it.
So the movie has a 7.1 on IMDb, and
What the
I'm pretty
fuck?
sure The Godfather 2 has like a 3 on IMDb. Um, and I think it has a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes. People are really enjoying the movie. And that is the angle on which I'm like, there must be something in this movie for people. And I think what it is, I cannot elucidate without being extremely condescending.
Okay, I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, because I also have a theory about this that is maybe the most patronizing thought that I've ever had and
I
considered
know.
voicing on this show. But please go ahead with yours and
Well,
we'll see if it's the same one.
I do think that I don't mean if it's necessarily young people, although it might be that. I think that the people that are reacting really positively to the movie, which is not without its charms, and I mean that sincerely about a movie I really
Yeah.
didn't enjoy. Um, I think that maybe it is just like people who haven't seen a lot of movies and a lot of horror movies. Like, I think that it's just like if you're hearing a lot of things about this movie with a relatively novel concept, and you have a lot of like I don't know if you're a person with reservations about seeing genuinely scary movies, but this one that sort of feels a little bit like a community theater, like spooky Halloween night out. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
a lot of fun for you, and like that is extremely condescending. I feel like such a fucking dick.
Well, no, because the thought is almost exactly the same, but mine is slightly more specific in that it's people who have not seen the long lineage of stuff that movie is aping.
Truly, yeah.
Because at this point, like, Ghostwatch was like, what, 1992?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had so much stuff since then that if you're going to do this in 2024, I need to see something new from the format instead of watching you do gags from Ghostwatch, but worse.
Yeah.
That's my issue. But also, like, people only like this because they haven't seen enough movies. They need to watch some Kurosawa. Like, that makes me want to get back up on the roof. But
I can't
and
help but think it.
I'm saying that about myself, to be
Right.
clear.
No, and same for me, where it's like after watching the movie, which I think just like I don't know, there's got to be an audience who for this movie's gags was just having a delightful time and was being genuinely shocked by them and was just having a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah, and maybe
And
people who don't have a Grinch-sized heart and have seen all of these other things I'm thinking of that have done this better also watched it and were like, hey, I like this. That's
yeah.
great. I just also worm water.
Well, speaking of worm water, I do think like I forget who first said this, and I have been saying it forever without crediting them. Who knows? It was probably like Film Crit Hulk or something. But like, I I don't think I don't think a something is a plot hole if you read about it online later and go, "Oh yeah." I think something is a plot hole if you think about it while you're watching the movie. If
Yes.
it bumps you and takes you out of the movie, I think it's a plot hole. And I watching that movie when mild spoilers for Late Night with the Devil, which I don't know if we're going to completely get through to the ending of. Um, but because it is the most recent of the three movies we're talking about, and also
You're
the most
right.
loved.
So
Um,
I guess we'll pop in a thing saying if you don't want to hear us spoil Late Night with the Devil, then skip to.
if you don't want to hear us spoil Late Night with the Devil, then skip to.
1 hour, 7 minutes, and 57 seconds.
Wow, who said that?
It's me, the cool demon guy.
I mean, for the real verisimilitude of the thing that we just, I guess, never iterated on from The Exorcist is it's a scary demon voice if you play a guy talking and a girl talking at the same time.
Yeah. If girls sound like guy, surely abomination.
Ugh, I'm so sick of it. Sorry, continue your thought.
Early on in the film, a psychic who's going out of his mind crazy as hell, according to the screenplay. I didn't read the screenplay, but all of a sudden, as the movie has been like very thinly escalating towards something being spooky, which is kind of like the Ghost Watch, Blair Witch, any other found footagey horror movie arc,
Yeah.
a character suddenly cartoonishly CGI projectile vomits black goo. First all over the stage, which has a shag carpet, by the way, and then directly on the video camera that's recording this show in like the late 70s. I forget when it's supposed to be set.
Right.
And like cartoonishly splatters the movie like it's the Family Double Dare opening title card. And I that is like the movie's like first big escalation with like an hour still to go. And it just like in that moment it so completely strains credibility that it's just like, oh, we're watching a dumb movie.
Yes.
Which is fine. It's fine for something to be a dumb movie. But like I think that this type of movie needs to have like a credible build that leaves the audience in suspense. And when instead we see the literal audience in the studio audience of the movie's late night show absolutely not reacting with the appropriate amount of credible horror to black goo being sprayed in their direction. It's just ridiculous. It's just not working. And I want it to be ridiculous, but
yeah.
the movie is so at odds with itself about how ridiculous it is supposed to be.
Yes. That is such a good way to put it. I was going to ask you when you mentioned it with the shag carpet. Can you give me like a pure like a smarmy movie character like that's not washing out or some such?
Get the borax.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just and then like when they call cut, they just go and I don't know if the audience can hear that while I started percolating on these things, I did pull out a fidget spinner and start spinning it.
Oh shit!
I'm such a fucking asshole.
Where's my fidget spinner? I'm gonna get mine too. There it is.
Hell yeah!
My trusty Naruto fidget spinner.
Aw, yeah. It's just I think that movie just like they had a clearly less than significant budget and probably less than what they wanted it to be.
But probably more than would have ever justified resorting to shit AI, but...
Probably. I mean, I've heard a lot of rumors and speculation about the movie's budgeting since it was also propped up by like 11 different production companies. I've heard a lot of people speculate that probably a lot of that money just got like secreted away during a lot of financial wheelings and dealings into somebody's bank account and was never seen again. But I think that just like the movie feels like there were like game time decisions where it's like, okay, are we making a silly movie or are we making a serious and credible movie? And they kept trying to make a serious and credible movie, and I think it just didn't work out.
Yeah, but because to do that, they needed to commit to the bit harder. Like the verisimilitude of the entire situation, it just like you can't half-ass that if this is going to be your bit and you're going to attempt to take this seriously at all.
Yeah.
Which, obviously the climax is incredibly silly. Like, but it doesn't read silly in a fun way. It just feels silly in an insulting way. Of
Right.
like, man, because we kept saying this as we were watching it, like as before and after the black goo escalation of like
Yeah.
when this goes off, this has to go off really hard to be worth it. And then it doesn't. And it's bad, ugly CGI except for the cool practical worm stuff.
I
But
like the
then it's
cool
also
practical worm.
like, that's not real. That didn't happen. Which it's doing a bit from Ghostwatch, which is like really effective in Ghostwatch of people being like, we just saw something crazy. Let's roll the footage back. And then you don't see it on the footage. Like,
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
a great bit, but it
that
doesn't work in this context.
that also kind of fits for me into the continuum of like this movie feeling like it was all like notes from producers that made it the way it is, where it's like I think this movie felt like it was meant to be the most mass market appeal version of Ghostwatch, which is why
Yes.
like it's not a it's it almost feels like it isn't acceptable to have the meta gag of gaslighting the audience. We needed to have a character in the film who is gaslighting a literal fictional audience within the film. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you and I watched years ago the WNUF Halloween special, which
yeah,
I is not a movie that I like. It's a movie that I respect greatly because that thing had a budget of $1,000.
yeah.
And
The language I was going to use was that I feel like it's not a movie that I love, but it was a movie that I think I found too earnest to dislike.
yes, and I think even a little bit of that energy would have been so useful here. Even one good fake commercial, just a little, because WNUF is not the kind of thing that is mass market appealing. And I think to pull off the kind of like commitment to wide angle, no quick cutting, no close ups, that I think if you want to do this sort of thing right and you want to be accurate and like really commit to this is found footage. But I mean, in the same sense that like it breaks diegesis, and this is like an axe I have to grind with any found footage that breaks the found footage thing. Like, if you have to do that, don't make a found footage movie. Like, and I understand that that's probably a very niche crotchety old man type opinion because like who cares, but I think it does betray why the fuck are we even doing this then? Why did we start with this in the first place if to get the climactic action, which presumably the movie is about and building to, that we have to break the paradigm that we're doing? It
Yeah.
bothers me. It bothers me. It feels like a cheat, especially
And
watching this movie and wanting it, genuinely wanting it to succeed.
yeah. And who knows what like the director and writers wanted out of the movie, right? In terms
Yeah.
of like, you know, maybe they wanted the very pure version of it that's just a late night show that gets fucked up. The
Yeah.
concept of the movie is an absolute gas. By the way, we've been talking about the movie for a long time without summarizing the concept, which is
It's true.
a late night show gets fucked up. Uh, but I think like the device that they set up where the what the film that we're watching is actually some kind of documentary unearthing of the raw tapes from that night is one that for a more charming movie I'm completely on board with. Like I think
Yeah.
it's like a cute enough gimmick for this kind of thing. And I think that just like that they don't commit to it to such an extent that the movie then does what these found footage movies so frequently tend to do, and it becomes a conventional film that even has a few shots that have like an anamorphic widescreen aspect ratio near the end, just completely abandoning the premise of the movie.
Yeah.
That does really irk me. And I agree that it does feel a little like crotchety pedantic to make that point. But it is like, what are we doing? Why
But
we do
because the
that?
flip side is when you have a found footage movie, people complain about like, oh, the protagonist set up the camera like just in time to capture their death. And it's like, well, yeah, because this is the alternative.
Otherwise, there's no movie.
Otherwise, there's no movie.
Or yeah, they gotta do the fucking the thing they do in this, which is like I don't know. I
There are
I think
things
that's
to like about it. I think some of the production design is strong, even though AI question mark, the actual art within the set feels like the slightly nicer AI versus the interstitial ones that are just trash. Um, the main guy who you said is other stuff who I have not seen before.
yeah, David Desmalkian.
He looks like a 70s guy. I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily like his performance. Like, this is the thing I've been chewing on, that like for this to work, you need that host to be really charismatic. Asterisk. I know that it's kind of a failing show, so he can't be too charismatic. But there are ways to be charismatic that don't translate well to being like a late night host, Like, I need more from that character. If it's a wiry sort of charisma or whatever, it's just he's like too dry for this. And the things that are happening are not interesting enough for him to be the straight man and like
Yeah.
carrying all of that weight narratively.
I feel like I think that is something that frustrates me so much about the movie is that if it is actually like and again spoilers, like Crossroads style story where this character made a pact with a demon in order to get good ratings on his late night show.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the late night show so poor? Like it just actually does not translate to me. It bumps me because it just isn't internally consistent. It's frustrating to watch because of it. Why is this there was a point when we were watching where I think Aaron was just like, oh, this is a pretty dour late night show. And it really is. Like, their spooky Halloween episode is like a big depressing bummer. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Like,
if there's
what
going to
late
be
night show are
some...
you watching that's like that? It doesn't.
Yeah, because again, spoilers, we've told you to skip to X time if you don't want spoilers. So now if you've chosen to opt out because you don't want further spoilers, it's like, haven't we already paid the piper with his wife dying?
Yeah.
This incredibly telegraphed everything about it. Like, if that's going to happen, at least his show should be good.
Yeah.
And, you can still, within the fiction of the show, say that it's not performing well and it actually be entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, you're picking weird parts of the narrative, like the fiction of this, to hang your hat on and ignoring others. And just the exorcism stuff felt so straightforward and just the same shit we've been doing forever with this 30 going on 13 actress.
Yeah. And bless her heart, I think she did as fine
She
of
did a
job
fine
as
job.
she could have. And I that's another thing though, like the straight ahead exorcistness of the exorcism stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where it's really just like that feels like a producer who doesn't know shit about horror movies stepped in and was like, well, it's got to look like The Exorcist. Because I just like, why does she have like gore makeup on her face when she's a demon? It's like,
That we're
why would
getting
it work that way?
close-ups of.
Ugh.
Yeah, that bugs me. And I'll cop to the split TV head at the end being kind of a cool idea, but
Lots of fun.
not what I wanted from the climax of that movie, and not enough for me.
Yeah.
And then it just continued to drag past that point.
Yeah.
I think I like the very, very final beat, but for that to play, I need you to show me that in the clinical 70s widescreen go back to the tape format. That's the only way that works for me.
Yeah.
And
ugh. in the world of like the movie, like having some pleasures to it, I do think like I have found very telling that like when we were watching the movie, in terms of like what I expect and want and the way I'm like modulating those expectations as I watch the film, there's like a skeptic character who's clearly based on a real guy who Aaron was smart enough to remember
James
the name
Randi.
of. James Randi, good job. Thank you.
Because I felt embarrassed that I didn't know who he was talking about, so I took it upon myself to correct that.
Hell yeah.
Could I tell you more about this man? No, but
we can drop his name though here on the pod. But I there's multiple critiques of the movie that I've seen that are like very mild critiques from people who liked the movie overall,
Mm-hmm.
who have called out his performance as feeling like kind of too hammy and obvious. And for me, he was a very stagey actor who was having fun and being silly, and he was my favorite part of the movie by far because he was having fun and being silly.
Yes, exactly. Like if not that everyone needed to do that, but it was like, oh, specificity.
Uh-huh.
And not just like everyone else who was boring. It's like, oh yeah, they slept together. Oh, a demon slut shaming. We've never seen that one before.
I know, so true.
Like seriously, if a demon calls you a whore, it's the year 2024. I know it was the 70s in the fiction of that. But same with watching Exorcist Believer. It's like, is that really all you got? Like
I
you're
know.
supposed to be a minion of Satan and have the thing that's going to crush me psychologically.
That's a pretty like retrograde fucking whack ass demon. Like I am not impressed.
Yeah. There's a that sketch idea is free.
Actually, yeah, demon gets canceled. I do like the idea. That feels like a Mad TV sketch. That just like
It really does.
it hits the brakes big time, and the demon's just like, whoa, 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 hold on.
Wait, don't post that.
Listen, I've spent a lot of time talking, and now it's time I take a step back and listen.
Demon Notes app apology manifesting in the Notes app. The Ouija board. I'm sorry, women.
God. Also, I didn't think about the fact that the three movies that we're discussing all do have the lame slut-shaming demon element to them.
Oh my god, you're so right, and I am a hypocrite because I wasn't even thinking about it, which is the weakest part of the third movie that we're going to talk about, and I feel like I've also held off on not saying the name of the third movie because for as much as we just shit on this like generally pretty liked indie horror movie, I'm going to say that I liked this movie and remove any credibility I had left. So yeah, that was Late Night with the Devil. Do you have any more thoughts on it?
The AI is galling. I'm sure that a lot of people worked on it who have a lot of skill. The production design feels kind of obvious in a way that just feels low budget, but otherwise I think, is pretty accomplished. I think people should watch it and see if they have fun.
Yes, and I would be curious to hear people's opinions when they exist between. I want the gradations between uncritical 5 stars and half star, but only for the AI and refusing to engage with anything else about the film.
Yeah, that frustrates me a lot for sure.
I would like to hear a substantive take.
Yep.
That is
and
not
as always,
simply parroting.
Ugh. As always, I wish I had had the experience that the 5-star people are talking about. I wish I did love it.
I am a miserable killjoy.
Yeah.
I would love
sure. I
to
feel that way about
experience
myself,
happiness, as do all humans in this life, and how could I possibly besmirch someone for finding a shred of it in a silly little film?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of something I could try to reflect on too positively. We could segue on to the next movie, which we both enjoyed pretty well to make ourselves feel less like we're complete thumbsucks.
Yeah, so you were here on Friday, and we spent a very long time finding an appropriately shitty movie to watch, and I felt bad for how picky I was being, because I think we moused over some, like, genuinely great capital G, capital M movies, but it was not the headspace I was in. I needed dog shit.
Yeah, I feel similarly.
Like, sometimes that's the mood, and as much as I did not like the previous 2 movies that we discussed, I had a great time watching both of them.
Yeah.
Because I was with my buddies making fun of a dumb movie.
Talking real loud out of bafflement, which is always a fun thing to do. It was fun when you were 8, and it's fun now. It's
my favorite, especially when it's with my gamer friends who are really funny.
Wow.
Yeah, so we chose, and I had 0 expectations for this, and maybe once again this is just expectation versus reality. If you go in with your expectations subterranean, if it's even kind of okay, you will have a good time. But the movie that we picked was Evil Dead Rise. Now, Jory, you have a long history with the Evil Dead franchise. I have no fealty to it. I have seen the first two ? And they are just okay to me. I did not see them at a formative age. I don't have a whole lot of like Sam Raimi fanboyishness in me. I appreciate them for what they are. It's just not quite my bag. So
yeah,
that's a little bit of context here for me.
I think the formative age is really, really important. And I also think that like I also saw Evil Dead 2 at a time when there was still virtually nothing else like it, because even like the movies that did kind of bring together horror and comedy in the same way, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, though the comedy is extremely inept. And even though I'm not saying Evil Dead's comedy is like broad and sort of cutting, but I do think it like it's a well executed movie, so much that like it having stupid fucking Looney Tunes gags in it does genuinely surprise you, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And now there are 100 million fucking movies that do that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And it just like genuinely does not feel as special. I still really love the movie, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think hitting on that after several things that felt really joyless and inert in that respect, getting to see some slapsticky, like maybe the most gore that I've seen in a movie in the past few, a semi recent movie.
Yeah.
Or it's just nice to see fountains of blood and like people chewing it up and having like a good hammy time, and things being gross and it not just being all the way through CG. Like, there was good and cute practical stuff in this that I appreciated. There were puppets.
Yeah.
Eating sugar glass. Like,
I know. Really making a meal of it, too.
I keep thinking about that because it's just like, oh, man, that's so nice that they just let that happen and they did that.
And the look on the actor's face that's kind of like, ooh, yummy, yummy.
Yeah, exactly. Loving it. And that it's mean and funny. It's not mean in the way that Exorcist Believer is mean, which feels like a soulless, moralizing mean.
It feels misanthropic.
Yeah. And this is just sort of like, yeah, we'll kill all the children. I don't give a fuck. Not all.
Yeah, I think the movie's interesting because like so many things about it are like so kind of formulaic. Like I'm really frustrated by the opening and closing sequences of the movie, which like Evil Dead Rise is a new Evil Dead movie. It's patterned a little more after the 2013 remake than it is by the original films, which is to say that they are going for a much darker tone, even though that there's still silly shit in it. And its big reinvention, a lot like Predator 2, is that this time the bad creature is in the mean streets of Los Angeles, the concrete jungle.
In New Zealand, I mean, an apartment in Los Angeles.
And the movie is bookended with kind of like whack feeling segments that are set in like a cabin in the woods.
That feels so like
perfunctory.
Yeah, or just like studio interference of like, well, it's an Evil Dead movie. We have to have this.
And I mean, they weren't bad. I didn't dislike them, but it was just kind of like,
they were cute.
I think it kind of settled me in for a gear of being like, okay, well, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I do think that the setting up of the characters, look at all these quirky, they're going to protests and DJing and soldering iron ? At least it's something. Like, I was annoyed by it, but the fact that the movie just threw it away pretty quickly, I actually just appreciated. Like, the fact that we're not going to come back to it or get super mawkish about it, because it's just like once that movie starts going, it doesn't stop.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, thank God. And then we don't get like a whole denouement that ties into the whole thing. It's just like, you came in here, you got what you wanted, now we're out. Now we're doing the perfunctory, tying it back into the segment from the beginning, but you already got to see some cool shit, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think you put it well that like this movie's thin characterization doesn't bump me even close to as much as it usually does, because like they are genuinely not interested in telling us too much about these people. And in
Yeah.
terms of it being like kind of thin table setting, I think I found all of the characters broadly likable, and I found all the performances very likable. I really liked
Yes.
everybody in the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
especially the mom, I think is great.
yeah, she's
Especially
really
because
great.
she's not quite doing the. One thing that I'll point out after, watching Exorcist Believer and Late Night with the Devil is that it's not doing male and female voice layered to do a creepy voice. It's just like a creepy female coded voice for mom being possessed.
Yeah, I
Like
think
that
that.
exists. That's allowed to exist. You can just do that and it's a more interesting vocal performance and it doesn't sound like shit.
Yeah, I think like the for me like one of the most charming things in the movie is her, and I think this is in the trailer, but like her saying like the daughter Ellie says to the mom, wait no, Ellie and Cassie. Ellie's the mom, Cassie's the kid, but
Better memory than I have.
Ellie says like she's being a demon outside the door, and Cassie says, "Mom, is something wrong?" And she says, "Nothing that a big kiss from you won't fix," with like a very
Yes.
earnest smile. And that I think is like the most sincere feeling gag in the movie for me, just because it's like
Yeah.
just letting the actor do it straight ahead.
Yes,
I thought
and
that was a lot of fun.
all of her little curl hand insert shots and like movement coached things I thought were really cute. I loved the whole peephole sequence. Like,
Which had some galling CGI. But in the
yes.
context of this movie, I just like didn't really care that much. It didn't
Because for
really
as
bother
much as
me.
it shows you like blatant CGI stuff, then there's like it throws you a few practical bones in a way that feels really good.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. A little treat.
It's not just like Late Night with the Devil where you get the one burst of like, oh, worm, look good.
A funny puppet. I like it.
And then it's like goo, TV demon, goo. uh and yeah, I liked that about this one. And I liked that everyone's getting grievously injured. It's not like a little horror movie scratch. It's like you are being stabbed in the bicep. Maybe it's just being grievously injured IRL for me recently. but like there's more of a stake if these children are getting really badly injured.
God, the stakes are high if they are getting. Never mind.
Were
Let's
you
move
about
on.
to go low with it?
No. Wait, what? Wait,
I
what are
don't know.
you
I
thinking?
thought I don't know.
Like it
Where
was
were
gonna
you
get
going?
blue?
No, I meant that you were literally going to go with something regarding low. Like
Low,
this is embarrassing for
low,
both of us.
low. Trying to figure out what that could be. What else? What
This
else?
is making it worse. We have to move
What
on and
else?
act like this never happened.
Could we get a suggestion from the audience?
um Normally I think I would hate the level of like little cute cheeky visual homages and audio homages that it does to other horror movies. Like
Hmm.
it's the kind of thing that bugs the shit out of me if I already hate the movie. And I can think of many examples of that. But if I'm already it's the meme that's like, hello, human resources. But
Oh yeah.
for a movie I like and am having a good time with that references other horror movies, I think it's cute.
Yeah, I think
Like
it's a lot of fun.
being on fire and making the thing squealing sound, and like they did the Shining elevator, but they did it from inside the elevator. We're not just doing the shot, we're doing like a little bit of a twist on it. I like
Yeah,
that.
I think it was way more tasteful, and I mean honestly, I can't help but think of remember in Doctor Sleep when Rose the Hat is walking into the Overlook, and she looks to her right, and we see an insert shot of just the actual footage from the Shining of the elevator opening, and then we cut back to her, and she has a look on her face like, okay. I think I like this place. And she just
Well,
walks
that
on.
just happened.
Yeah.
And then all of the ghosts in their spirit Halloween costumes show up and eat her, or whatever happens in that movie.
Yeah, that is what happens in that movie. That's a movie that I would broadly say that I like, even though I had a generally unpleasant experience watching it. I think it bloomed in my memory a little bit just because I'm not currently watching any of the things about it that don't work.
Having a weird Stockholm syndrome where the idea that you're not watching it anymore makes you like it more.
I think that
I could be watching Dr. Sleep right now, so...
Speaking of practical stuff, the thing that I like about that movie is that they have actors playing Wendy, Jack, and young Lloyd.
Yes, who are well cast.
Who are very well cast.
And made up nicely and aren't doing like over the top cartoon caricatures.
Yeah. And the extended scene of Ewan McGregor speaking with the actor who's playing Jack Torrance, I think is like a very good scene that I sincerely liked a lot. And it like kind of redeems the movie for me in that blooming in my memory kind of way.
Okay, yeah. I like that too. Going back to Evil Dead Rise, I felt the same way because I watched Men recently after hearing people justifiably shit on it forever. There are a lot of things to hate about it, but, and this is spoilers for Men 2022.
Shucks.
/ for a certain type of person, this is a glowing recommendation. But it's like, once you show me like a nasty meat creature that's like birthing itself repeatedly and stumbling around and has like some level of being practical, I can no longer hate your movie, even if it's corny as fuck. You're showing me a cool, nasty meat creature. So
yeah, I have not seen Men, and this is a glowing recommendation for the movie, that there's a horrible meat creature being born.
And I was so upset that it was like, oh man, everybody just talks about like, Alex Garland, hope she sees this, 1 star, which is valid. The comment, but you have to be on the level of Alex Garland is not good at social commentary or making sweeping statements about anything. I thought we just accepted this, but apparently we're not on that level, and then like Men feels like an aberration, even though he made Ex Machina and Annihilation, which are 2 of the most like obvious thematically, emotionally movies with a bunch of great, interesting, like amazing craft, production design, acting, everything. Like, dude has good taste and works with talented people. It's just that maybe like the Men just does not work as well. But there is a lot to like about Men, in my opinion. Give Men a chance. Hashtag not all men.
Okay, yeah, okay. You just did the stuff that Brian would have done if he were here.
But no, meat creature. Come on. There's a meat creature. And there's
I'm very on board with meat creature.
And there's a meat creature in Evil Dead Rise. And it goes into a wood chipper and it spews the blood everywhere. Like,
there's a lot of blood everywhere.
Maybe I'm just a 12-year-old boy, but that's cinema.
I think that the movie also, it does just enough mostly winning allusions towards being thematically rich that it doesn't offend me, and I think it's just like it's having enough fun while also like not being completely horrible in the way that it's trying to get its themes across, that it's like I don't have any insults to level against the movie. I think I'm just like, it's got some really bad CGI. I think the bookended thing feels very forced and doesn't work.
The setup of how they find the book and the records is really dumb. The groupie slut, etc. Oh no, I'm pregnant. That's the worst part of the movie, and it's sort of the cinder block foundation of like the emotional shit in the movie.
Yeah.
That doesn't really need to be there.
And the groupie slut thing is the thing that definitely bumps me the most out of anything in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it also is winning a lot from being juxtaposed against a franchise of films and 3 seasons of a TV show that were capable of being unbelievably deeply misogynistic. So I think it like looks very good in comparison.
Yeah, and it doesn't belabor it all that much. I did really like manually running the record. I thought that was cute.
That's a lot of fun. Although, as you pointed out when we were watching it, the first time it happens, there seems to be no distortion on the audio whatsoever. Maybe that's because the Danny character is just an extremely good DJ who is extremely good at maintaining like 33 RPM or whatever that record would have been. Oh, wait, no. It probably would be a 70 if it's like an old manually stamped. It doesn't matter.
But yeah, I thought that was cute. I think that it works well in an apartment, even though what it is claiming is a shitty LA apartment is like by LA standards a fucking palace.
Yeah, truly beautiful.
Which is such a
And
horror movie thing. It's fine. And kind of climactically taking place in a parking garage. I will accept it because I really like that they don't blow their load on the meat creature immediately, you
I
know?
miss Brian so much.
I can only say that because Brian isn't here.
Yeah. That does remind me, so I have been meaning to say, I feel like I've probably told you a bit about Ash vs. Evil Dead in the past,
bit, yeah.
including just the other day when we were watching Evil Dead Rise. But there's multiple, like, season 2 and 3 both have a big gross out set piece that I think are both a lot of fun.
Okay.
And there's a diarrhea based set piece in season 2, which is super duper funny, where a deadite that is in like one of the drawers in a morgue like comes to life, and it's been like disemboweled and its intestine is spraying diarrhea at Ash. And so Bruce Campbell is just like completely covered in brown muck by the end of the scene, and it's very funny, and he's like very game for it. And then season 3 does have a cum-based scene where by the end of it, Bruce Campbell is completely covered in fake cum, which is like very, very funny, and he's very game for it.
Okay.
I do respect the show and him for doing that. It's very funny.
Yeah, I guess that also brings up the point of this is a very neo-French extremism thing. But when you will cover all of your main characters totally unrealistically in blood, I love it. I cannot help but love it. It's like, this is not how this works, but it looks so good. And like when they fall or spill out of the Shining elevator and they're just like slipping around in all of the fake blood and they're drenched in it and it's just super goopy. I love that. That gives me serotonin. But,
yeah, it does me too. That's a perfect way of putting it.
But going back to the meat creature, it's like we know it's there. We see the assembly of it. We see the outline of it a lot. And we never really get the full money shot of it, which I really, really appreciate. Like having the restraint to do that, which I'm sure a good bit of that is because it's like a practical puppet and like is clearly a puppet in certain shots. And I love that. That's just like... Jory, what's the Paul Rust quote or the Gorley quote? Fuck.
Oh, I think it's something Paul Rust said on the Gorley and Rust podcast, where it's not strictly applicable to this situation, but
but I can't stop thinking about it.
In talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, he's talking about how much he hated the DH sequence, and this is like basically the same reason most people hate it, but just articulated in this very particular way, where he says that the CGI de-aging robs you of the greatest special effect of all, the human face. Which I love so much. It's such a good sentiment.
And I think seeing a floppy, weird prop is the human face of a horror gag to me.
Yeah.
It's like that is a thing that was made by humans to be scary, and I like seeing the artifice of it as opposed to seeing the artifice of like bad-looking CG. Like I would and I understand it's cheaper. It's so much cheaper to do and easier to do CG. Like I completely get it, but there are just some things that you can't replicate. And I think it speaks to like the one moment of Late Night at the Devil that I unabashedly like, which is just the big gross out worm thing.
Yeah, which did look like it was pretty much totally practical when they switched to a fake Gus head as the worm comes out.
Yeah, and he's like ripping his fake stomach open. That looks great. It's the perfect amount of fake. It looks just enough to get your like human dumb meat brain to be like, look real, sort of.
Ew. No, I was gonna bring up the 2011 Thing prequel, where like I feel like there's some very dicey looking CGI of the meat creature at the end of Evil Dead Rise mixed in with the stuff that looks good. Like there's a couple of shots that bump you really bad.
Yes.
but I feel like there's like the Thing 2011 version of it where you're doing like the Ian Malcolm didn't stop to ask yourself whether you should do it type of thing, where they're just like showing it scuttling around in a way that just completely takes you out of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, and I mean that's
Where,
a consideration they made in the original Thing, is that they had that whole climactic, extremely expensive, labor-intensive set piece that was like a Harryhausen stop motion showdown with a big meat creature, and they cut it because
yeah,
it looked too fake. And like I respect the shit out of that.
yeah, me too. Right. I think that Evil Dead Rise, I think it's like, I don't know, it feels like a good sign that the movie has a comparatively low budget by modern Hollywood standards, and their solution to they probably would not have been able to pull off the meat creature from the end of the movie to great effect. And so instead they smartly just keep it off screen a bunch of the time.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Suspense.
Feels like you're watching a movie.
Suspense and Foley, and you show it when you can, and it worked. It worked for me. Do I think that
Yep.
Evil Dead Rise is like an incredible horror movie? No. But does it operate on a level that I've been dying, that feels so rare to watch a horror movie operate on, in that it's just like a fun trifle? And
Yeah.
I'm sure the same could be said by a different person for Late Night with the Devil. Like, I'm positive that that's what it is for a lot of people. And for some
You're
reason,
really right about that.
it bumps
Yeah.
me completely. And
Yep,
I'm sure
same.
that same person would look at Evil Dead Rise and be like, this is dog shit.
Yeah, it's gross. But yeah, it's a great, entertaining C plus movie.
Yes.
I like a C plus movie.
And if Late Night with the Devil had gone even a fraction as hard as Evil Dead Rise goes on the gore, I would like it better.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, because Late Night with the Devil, again, spoilers for Late Night with the Devil, their solution to trying to do something really shocking is to have everybody die really fast and suddenly.
Yes, at the
And
same
that, for me,
time with
didn't work
quick
at all.
cuts and with a lot of CG, and
Yeah.
they are all just dead now.
Yeah, it was a bummer.
Because at least Evil Dead Rise really does make a meal out of a bunch of those deaths.
Oh, yeah, and makes it take time in the way that it probably should.
Yeah.
People are having a very bad time for a while.
Yeah, there were a couple of, not that I simply cannot get scared at horror movies anymore, and I find reviews that are like, it didn't scare me, so it's bad, really frustrating, because I genuinely just don't think that's the metric that you can accurately measure things by
Yeah.
in horror. And you can't say the same thing about a comedy, where it's like, if a comedy doesn't make you laugh, it is kind of violating the core reason why you're watching it.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
But it's not like I'm immune to laughing at stuff in the way that I am immune to being afraid by a thing on a screen that is not
Oh,
real.
yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Because I feel like I can be charitable to a movie and kind of modulate. I'm kind of an easy laugh in general, but I
Yeah.
can also modulate it and laugh a little more easily and more openly, and that makes watching the movie more fun. And I can't trick my brain into being scared.
I can't even do it at like real life haunted houses. Like, after a
Yeah,
few years
same.
of doing Halloween Horror Nights and not Scary Farm, doing it this year, I was like, I'm going to make an effort to like be more scared, or at least not just giggle with delight the entire time, because I want to be targeted and scared. And you can't force yourself to do that.
Yeah. Same with horror games. It's
yeah.
like, I think I would enjoy them more if I was more scared. I love them. I really enjoy playing them, but like I would be having an even better time if I was truly scared of them. But
yeah, and for
instead,
me,
same as-
I don't get scared. I get stressed out in like not the fun, like, ooh, I'm scared way. It feels like work to me, and that's why I can't
Mhm.
play horror games usually.
That makes sense.
But where was I going with this? I don't know where.
Well, the
fuck
point I was
going
going to
with
make was
this.
that, like, for me, and I feel like maybe this kind of converges with what you were going to say, is that, like, I think that I'm still enjoying the craft of a scary thing, even if I am not afraid of the scary thing.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think where I was going to go with it is that, like, Late Night with the Devil isn't scary. No, here's where I was going to go with it. That I don't get scared by stuff, but there were a couple of moments in Evil Dead Rise that were like, that is a genuinely fun, new, little scary thing, or something that I haven't seen in a long time, that if I were more susceptible to this totally would have freaked me out. Like when the kid is wrapped up in the sheets and then is just kind of like flying through the room as a wrapped object. Thinking about seeing that when thinking of seeing many things from that movie when I was considerably younger, pre-horror movie enthusiasm, I would have been so fucked up.
Yeah, that rules. I think that's a great perspective to put on it. I think it's in many ways probably to the experience of a kid walking in on the movie and seeing it, a much gnarlier movie than I was even giving it credit for when I was watching it.
Yeah, because to me it's like slapstick. Where we're watching, and I mean that seems pretty like directly what a lot of Evil Dead is about, is slapstick. But thinking about the horror movies that scared me so bad when I was a kid, I mean, we with Brian watched Amityville Horror. That is such a nothing. And then Paranormal Activity is another major, incredibly long-lasting source of fright for me as a child. Isn't fair because I was a teenish. But yeah, that's very tame. That's mild.
It is, up until that shocking ending when she launches herself at the camera like so much CGI.
The demonic face, though. The demonic face is what really got me.
That rules. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, right? And so I think, as much as I have pretty vocally shit on, well, let's say just about anything, but specifically in regards to the ones that we've shit on today, for some people, that movie is going to be that long-lasting,
for sure.
This was genuinely spooky to me, or this was a thing that was a stepping stone that made me more interested in seeking out harder horror movies.
Yeah, and I think there's a podcast that I really love called Too Scary Didn't Watch, where 3 comedians talk about horror movies, where one of them, Sammy, really likes horror movies, and 2 of them, Emily and Henley, absolutely have zero tolerance for horror whatsoever. And so the podcast format is just Sammy, as if it's a storytelling podcast, describes the events of the horror movie, and Emily and Henley are genuinely scared just by hearing the story, and it's a lot of fun.
That makes me really happy.
Yeah, it's great. And at the end of their Late Night with the Devil episode, they were just like, "Wow, what a novel concept!"
Wow.
And it was like, God, I wish I could bring that energy to it. I wish I could have felt that way about it.
Yes. I feel that way about so many things. And I mean, is that not the ultimate beauty of media, is that we all have like fingerprints or snowflakes, our own, reactions to things that are based on our life experience, our taste, our everything. I mean, how bland and boring would it be? And as we already see in the way that camps get divided about stuff, of if everybody had the same opinion or the same 2 opinions about things. And maybe that's one of the things that bumps me and makes me more severe on certain movies, like Late Night with the Devil, where the only 2 opinions it seems like you can have is evil, vile AI usage, or this was perfect.
I think you're working really hard to rationalize this, and I think that your irrational hatred of the film is going to go down in the annals of history.
And not only that, I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I was going to make time for segments here, but this wasn't an episode length What's Poppin', because what I recommend, I think I would recommend all of them except for Exorcist Believer, which I genuinely don't believe is worth anybody's time, even if you're just doing a roast mode watch, because it's not even fun enough to do that for.
I truly think that movie is like the type where my whole thing about trying not to present this opinion that I didn't enjoy something as being an objective fact and like trying to find the positive in something, I sincerely think that is such cultural detritus that there isn't a positive to find in it. I think that it is a truly shambolic and poor film.
Yeah, I hated and was infuriated by Late Night with the Devil, but I think if you're listening to this and it sounds interesting to you, you should absolutely watch it, and you'll probably like it. I genuinely think you'll probably like it. Mm-hmm. It's just that I am an asshole, and not I'm like, I'm an asshole. I tell it like it is. It's like I genuinely wish I could feel joy.
Yeah, I feel
Kinda
jaded
way.
for not having enjoyed this film.
Yes. And then Evil Dead Rise, I don't know, maybe you'll like it. Maybe this is one of those things where I'm totally off base, and that's what you know, there's an L in my name for a reason, because I'm always taking the L.
That there's a J in my name because in the Tonight Show battle of the early 2000s, I sided with Jay Leno.
You know, the saying that the L, that there's an L in my name for a reason, that was a letterboxed comment that I got years ago on my 1-star review of Inland Empire.
Oh shit.
Which is like, okay, you're wrong. I stand by my opinion, but I respect you immensely.
That movie is so full of great stuff, and it's a super fucking rough watch.
It is. I love David Lynch. I am like maybe problematically a Lynch fangirl.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I really am opposed to standing anything, and I am probably the closest to standing David Lynch as I am any other thing on earth. I love him so much.
yes, and that movie feels like what people talk about when they derisively talk about David Lynch.
Yeah, for sure. Including the fact that usually his work looks cool and good and beautiful, and that movie looks like shit.
Yeah, and you look at something like, oh, you're here, Jory, and the number of times I've tried to bring up reflections of evil on this show, I could count it on one hand.
Gotta go.
But at least you're here. Like, that movie is ugly to the point of being an assault on the senses, but it's
Oh,
also
yeah.
beautiful and really nice to look at.
Uh-huh.
Somehow.
It's a wonderful looking movie, yeah.
Like, it's a worse
and I-
looking movie than Inland Empire, and yet visually is such a treat in a way that Inland Empire just absolutely is not.
Yeah, and I mean, Inland Empire, it is playful in the way that, like, Reflections of Evil is. Like, it is, like, having a lot of fun with the medium.
Yeah.
But it just, like, it was shot with a digital camera that makes it look amateurish and frustrating to watch. It's very unpleasant.
Well, yeah, and it's so interesting too because Inland Empire and Reflections of Evil on like a thematic, emotional, and visual level are such similar movies, and the gulf in between how I feel about those two movies could not be wider.
Yeah.
Where I adore David Lynch. It's my least favorite thing I've seen from him. Meanwhile, like, I think out of the 3 Damon Packard movies I've watched, like, not only is Reflections of Evil my favorite and I think the best of his work, it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I truly loved it.
Which is...
even though it is monstrous and problematic in some ways.
Yeah. It is, like, pretty much unrecommendable. Except for maybe, like, I can count on one hand the number of people that I can recommend it to, but knowing that in recommending it to that specific person, it's like I know for a fact and would put money on the fact that this X person would adore this movie.
And you are effectively condemning them to hell by recommending it to them.
Oh, hell? Like reenacting the theme park accident you died in over and over?
It's a good movie, folks. Check it out.
It's a great movie. It's on archive.org.
It's for some reason in the middle of a movie that's like more or less a personal narrative about psychosis. It also includes a lengthy screed about the evils of Steven Spielberg that feels like bitterly personal and deeply mean.
Maybe one of the meanest, most bitter movies I've ever seen, and somehow also the funniest.
Yeah.
There's a sequence in the middle of the movie that's maybe one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie.
I couldn't catch my breath for several minutes from how hard I was laughing at various points in that movie.
I think about it constantly. Constantly. And I'm saying this, and a handful of people listening to the show are going to go to archive.org and try to watch this movie. And they're going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So if you can't handle overwhelming sound editing, lots of vomit, blood, screaming, nonstop screaming, layered screaming, things don't make sense, and yet they make so much sense. Watch Reflections of Evil. Jory, this has been a great episode for me.
This has been lots of fun
because I love talking to my friend about movies.
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't
think
really
we-
care if other people get to hear it. I mean, it's great. And thank you for listening, folks at home. I'm glad you're
Yeah,
here.
thanks for being here, gamers.
Um,
I think we haven't said anything that is too alienatingly mean. I think we did a good job of riding the line of keeping our negativity.
yeah.
And then we got really effusively positive about a major Hollywood motion picture from the past year. So we're doing okay.
Yeah, I think our corporate overlords will be pleased.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting kickbacks from big AI right now.
for only talking shit about every other aspect of Late Night with the Devil.
Great. Well, those are some movies that you can check out. This has been another episode of Late Night without Brian Wecht. He will be back soon from
God,
tour.
I miss him so goddamn much.
I really do miss him, and also hopefully I'll be back to like being visible within the frame of my webcam so we can get back to doing video episodes, because the present position I have to be in to record these without hurting myself is unpleasant.
How's Maybe doing right now?
She is struggling to get away from me. No, she's doing great.
That's actually the opposite of the dynamic expected. I expected that she was bothering you.
She
so.
very sweetly laid on my lap for most of this and did not
Angel.
get too upset and didn't distract me with sticking her tongue out too much. Nope, she's doing it.
She's doing
again.
it. You're just not looking.
Yeah, she is doing it again. Great. Jory, would you like to plug the game Homebody?
I would.
Where can people get it?
Please check out Homebody. It's available on anywhere you play video games. On Steam, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and the Nintendo Switch.
Wow.
It's a psychological horricle game that I poricled a lot of my emotionals into, and so did Leighton. And if you're into puzzles and horror and thinking about feelings, I think that you'll enjoy it a lot.
Hooray! Okay, see you everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye. I don't know how to end these without Brian. I'm lost without him.
Bye.
Don't tell him I said that. Oh fuck, he's editing this.
Leighton Night is produced by Brian Wecht, Leighton Gray. Sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Leighton Night. Follow us on Twitter at Leighton Night, on Instagram at Leighton_Night, or email us at leightonnight@gmail.com.